Welcome to the Unity Manifest podcast. Here is your host, Gary Cocciolillo.
Welcome, everyone, to the Unity Manifest podcast. I am your host, Gary Cocciolillo, and today our guest is Candace Sanderson, or Candy Sanderson, author of Reluctant Messenger. She was a regular on the former podcast, Everything Imaginable. Now, I guess some of you might be wondering why the change. I've been debating whether I even want to explain myself about that or just doing this randomly. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to let the listeners figure it out. So thanks for coming on, Candy.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. And Gary, what an honor to be your first guest on the new platform. Thank you.
Well, you've been a huge influence on my own personal growth and everything imaginable. Also, you were always a great contributor. So you were like the obvious choice. And you kind of introduced me to the topic of what I wanted this podcast to be about.
Well, you know, when I think about your new logo, you sent that to me, and the first thing I thought of, wow, this is great. When you look at the logo, you have that in small letters, the O and the M. It's like, oh my, I love that. But then I also think about the name of it. You have the UM, and to me, and my Southern accent, those both say the same thing. But what they are, they're like these energy vibrations when people chant. And I used to think of chanting as, yeah, you know, what is that? Who cares? But the more I'm in this field, the more I realize everything. Like Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequencies, and vibrations. So we've got these new vibrations that will help manifest unity. So I think this is great. This is a new start. I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. So let's talk about, like, we were talking earlier about your podcast and some of the things that you've been talking about on your podcast and YouTube channel about the tools. So I thought that maybe be a good thing to talk about, because using the tools to kind of like raise ourselves up out of, the muck or the lower, not even really the muck, because I don't even like calling it something negative, because even like sometimes like a high-low idea, I'm not certain about it, if there is such a thing as a high and low or far and close, but
Right. Well, actually, the way I see those, Gary, those are real when we're in the 3D.
Yeah.
Because, we get up one day and we just feel low as can be. Other days we get up and we feel great. But from that larger perspective, now what I call the non-physical realm, I mean, who knows what that is? I just simplify it by calling it the 5D. So when your audience listens, when I say something about 5D, I'm just talking about that field of energy that surrounds us. But we can use that field of energy, because we use it anyway, whether we know it or not. But once we recognize it, we can use that field of energy to help us in our 3D lives. Now, going back to what you just said about my YouTube channel, we were talking about this before we started recording. And I was telling Gary that I just finished up 11 episodes in a new series about consciousness and developing tools for consciousness. So you can actually develop psychological tools or psychic tools or energy tools, whatever you want to call them, using your imagination that will help you have an out-of-body experience or help you navigate if you're having an out-of-body experience. But they also help you navigate the 3D. Now, there's too much I could go into this and explain it in about 6 hours, but okay, I'm not
6 hours, the abbreviated version.
Right. I'm going to give you the abbreviated version. But everything in that episode is based on information that I have received from my messengers. My messengers tell us that everything in the world is energy. Well, Tesla knew that, and I think more and more people are seeing that too. I now see the world through that lens of energy. And when you see it through the lens of energy, it actually takes the woo-woo out of these psychic kind of things that happen. The messengers, for example, tell me about something that's called the T formula, TEA, thoughts, energy, action. So you have a thought and you want it to manifest. So let's say your thought is, I want to meet my guide, a spiritual guide. And it's like, okay, this is great. I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden you're meditating and you're thinking, I can't do this. What makes me think I can do that? Then you actually do manifest that that thought, because you have just fueled that thought with doubt. So think of law of attraction. So the law of attraction says, okay, now we have doubt here. So we're going to move in that direction. So the outcome, the action in the TEA is, I'm not going to meet my guides because that stuff's not really real.
Right.
So the messengers say that TEA, the energy is very important. And we can use that energy and manipulate it and change it so that our thoughts, will manifest. And this is where the psychic tools come into play. So when you have a thought, and first of all, a thought is like an intention.
Right.
If you decide you want to do something, it's kind of like an invitation, according to the messengers. If you have an Evite and you put it in your outbox, but you don't send it, no one ever knows about your event. Right. Or if you've got the old time, put a stamp on it and send it. If that's on your kitchen table and you don't send it, nobody knows about it. So in that TEA formula, for your thought or your intention to get out there, you have to send it, meaning you have to let go of it. When you let go and that intention is in the universe, and the universe in terms of the 5D energies where your angels and guides are, the universe will take care of the problem for you, the situation for you, but you got to give them that invitation. Now, you also have to fuel it appropriately. So if doubt comes in, it's like, no, let's change that energy. Why bring in something like doubt? Let's uplift our energy. So let's say you're feeling really down one day and you really want to do something, but you can't, and you're so depressed, you just can't get out of bed. And it's like, this is just not working. I don't know what's going on with my life. Well, you're now fueling whatever thoughts you wanted with lower energy, which is very true, especially in the 3D. In order to uplift yourself, if you can't do it, have a tool. Okay, this is where imagination comes in. My messengers tell me that we use the ears to hear, the eyes to see, but we use imagination to boost our intuitive skills. So I'm giving people permission to use their imagination. So I'm laying in bed, can't get out, so depressed. And then I want to do something different. I want to change this. I have to change the fuel that I use. One go-to tool that I have, and Gary and I were talking about this before we started recording, I have something that always works for me. And I don't know where it came up, years ago, but I imagine that I'm on this beautiful hillside getting ready to have a picnic. I can smell the fresh air. I can feel it. I look above, there's a beautiful blue sky, white clouds. I lay down this quilt and I have this beautiful big wooden picnic basket. I open it up and guess what comes out? Dozens of puppy dogs tumble out of this basket. They climb on me and start licking and kissing me. And it is so sweet. But every time I think of that, it uplifts me.
Mhm.
It makes me giggle. It makes me smile. So that's a perfect example of having a psychic tool ready to use at a moment's notice. If you're feeling down or low, bring that in. You probably have your own thoughts of something that happened maybe in your childhood that just you can't even think about it without laughing. Have those tools ready to bring into your awareness, and it will change your energy level. And as you become happier,
Mhm.
as you are more uplifted, then whatever that thought was that you have now fueled it with higher vibrational energies that will help the universe to manifest what it is that you want.
Mhm. One of the things I was just thinking as you're talking is, and we were talking about a little bit earlier too, um, like earlier, like my younger years of life, I didn't really think, I didn't know I could control my thoughts. I didn't know I had a choice. I thought my thoughts were going to run my life. I was a complete victim of that, of
Yes.
that programming, you know. So one of the things that you have to kind of, I think I had to first learn how to do is even be able to see what I was thinking. And then after that, have to learn how to change it, because one of the things about thinking is like, if our first reaction is to do the complete opposite, which isn't always the right thing to do, especially if you're having a good thought, So
Right.
it can be a little bit of a tricky terrain to navigate in my own head.
Well, when you have a thought and then you begin to think about what your thought is, do you realize what you're doing? Or do you understand how that happens?
I do now, yeah. I didn't always.
Okay, right. I lived my life, I was a psychologist who all of a sudden one day started channeling. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'd lived by the scientific method. If I couldn't see, hear, taste, or feel something, it didn't exist. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, I've stepped into this bizarre, strange world that I really didn't even believe in.
Hmm.
But once you can take a look at what you're thinking, think about that. How do we do that? We we all have what people call a witness or an observer. Now, my observer is pleasant enough. She's kind of humorous, but she is always the first one. Like, if I'm not known to be real graceful, so I trip a lot. And when I trip, she's the first one to say, "Oh, I hope no one saw that." It's like, yeah, I agree. I hope they didn't. Or when I get up and I'm retired now, but I get ready to go to work, my observer would say, that outfit really doesn't go very well. But she's always observing me and commenting on how I look. And I'm sure your audience, if you think about it, you have that voice in your head that says that too. Now, let's think about that. Who is that voice? What is that voice? It's not you, but it's outside of you. Yet it's an aspect of you.
Hmm.
So what happens, I tell people that when you recognize your observer coming on, pause and embrace it, because what you've done is you just started to step outside of the 3D. That observer becomes the anchor that will keep you in the 3D, but he or she can also push you into the 5D, where you're connected to unity consciousness, where you have access to your angels and your guides. So when your observer comes on and she's critical or he's critical, you can wait and stop and say, okay, now I want to bring in a higher aspect of my observer. So you can actually move your observer like a slider, in a recording studio, you have these volume sliders.
Hmm.
You can actually put your observer on a slider and move that. And what you're doing is using your imagination, which is that key to becoming intuitive. You're using your imagination to push that observer higher into the 5D. So what you're doing is 3D, we have this perspective.
Right.
You have your observer, you've got this perspective. As we move farther and farther outside of ourselves, we become part of a field of energy where we're connected to everything. So the greater our perspective becomes. So when we have our observer a little bit higher, he or she might say, you know what, you're saying nasty things about that person driving in front of you. Maybe we should just wait and see what happens.
Right.
Perhaps this person that you deemed as an idiot driver is on their way to the emergency room because there's, something traumatic going on. Our narrow picture now becomes larger, but it gives us an opportunity to stop and realize we are more than our physical bodies and let that greater aspect of ourselves, we can embrace it, and then we can actually use it to actually move farther into that 5D.
Yeah. Yeah. Another interesting aspect, I think, too, that kind of goes away, and we're talking about a little bit too, is linearity. Like things in the 5D are not necessarily linear. Like everything here, we start at step one, go to step two, step three, step four. Everything we kind of we go from beginning to end. In the 5D, it doesn't work that way.
It does not work that way at all. There is actually no time. And this is one thing I discuss in my series. My messengers have told me about something that they call the POE, point of existence. And that is a way to visualize consciousness. But consciousness is just awareness, okay? But for most of us, that POE, that point of existence, our consciousness is like a tiny dot, and it hangs out in our body, Gary. So we think that we are our physical bodies. Someone might say, "Who are you?" And you say, "Well, I am Candace Anderson." Well, I'm not. That's my name, but that's not who I am. But we connect so much with our physical body. We say, "Oh, my hair looks great," or "My leg hurts," or, "My hands are pretty," or whatever it is. But it's my. But then when we realize our awareness, our consciousness is not our body, it's just residing in our body, we can start expanding it. And when we expand it, my messengers tell me so this is quantum mechanics, we've now gone from a particle state, a little dot, to a field state, to a wave form of energy. And when we go into that wave form of energy, time does not operate like it does in the 3D. In the 3D, I thought that time went from point A to point B. It's like straight as an arrow, and it moves in one direction only, forward. So to visualize that, let's look at that dot, that POE. It's like this dot that trots along this straight line. But the messengers have shown me that time is a sine wave, which is an energy wave. So it's curvy. So now when we take a look at time, that little dot goes up and down that path, and we see, well, from point A to point B isn't as logical and linear as I thought, because it's curvy. The path is longer. And Gary, we know it's true. We have a root canal and time stretches. Yet if you're having fun, time goes by so fast. But now when we expand from that particle state, because that's our awareness, into a field state, we now see more of that timeline within that field state.
Yeah.
So that's how our influence of time, our perception of time, changes when we have expanded, because we're no longer connected to that body that travels on the path. We become part of this field of energy. Think about people that have a near-death experience. So many times they'll say, something happens and immediately they see themselves above their body. They look down and recognize, like, oh my, that's me down there. Or even having an out-of-body experience, they, quote, look down and see themselves. Well, when you expand into a field state, then that small particle of who you were, of your body, you're no longer there. You are above it or
Yeah, it's
below it
different.
or around it somehow, but it just really demonstrates that we are actually all that is, which is why I love your new title. I mean, it's Unity Manifest. It's
Thanks.
taking that 5D unity connection to all that is and manifesting it also in the 3D.
Yeah, I think humans have a lot of potential that's just untapped.
Yeah.
And it's always been there. It's been, people have known about our abilities for thousands and thousands of years, but yeah, it's really, like the whole podcast thing. I always said it in Everything Imaginable too, is that we are the universe experiencing itself.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of like where I wanted to focus on, because I feel like that's something that brings the world something that's positive. It's useful. It's a tool. Like you're trying to give the world some tools,
Yes.
And that's kind of like where I kind of see things going for me too, is try to just put all kinds of stuff out there for people to use.
And the more that we connect to that 5D, then the more we change. Like, for example, having an out-of-body experience is something that's like really cool, but we all do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
At night, we leave our bodies and we dream. The more that you take your consciousness into the 5D and become aware of it as you do that. So now I'm really talking about lucid dreaming, becoming awake during your dream, the more that you change, because your energy body is in that field, expanded into that field where everything is connected. So your energy body changes. And when you come back to your 3D body, you're a little bit different. That's, I think, what happened to me. I was going to Monroe Institute in
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, where you learn how to, really expand your awareness. And there's all these psychics that go there, and it's like, yeah, I can't do any of that. It was interesting, but not me, not for me. I didn't do these things. But every time I would go to a program, I would come back and I would be a little bit different. I didn't realize it in real time. And then all of a sudden, I reached this tipping point where these angels and guides come to me and start giving me messages. And it's actually ideal, because being the objective observer as a psychologist, I immediately didn't respond to it when I started getting messages. I mean, I didn't say, oh, yippee, I can channel information, nor did it scare me. I became that objective observer. So what I did is I actually, without knowing it, engaged that observer, that witness, and I allowed her to just see what's going on, and I would document it. I would record the messages, and later I would judge it. But the more we step intentionally into these fields, the more it changes our energy makeup, and that changes us.
Big time.
Yeah, yeah. And you may not realize it. I didn't until one day, and you reach a tipping point. Well, for me, I reached a tipping point, and from that morning to that afternoon, it's like I was a completely different person. But quite often, it's just gradual, and then you realize, okay, I'm seeing things differently. I'm actually listening to or watching my own thoughts. So what I'm trying to do is to give people some tools so that when they see their observer, they can say, oh, wait a minute, this is pretty cool because there's a part of me that's now stepped outside. So let's embrace that. And there's many ways to expand your consciousness. I mean, you can listen to meditations. A lot of people do plant-based rituals, native medicines. A lot of people do this just through prayer. But that doesn't mean you can't do this by just walking out in nature, connecting to the earth, just being open. Also, chanting. Chanting is another way to get into that vibrational state that surrounds us, but many of us don't even recognize. That's why breathing in a certain pattern can also connect us. It's learning to live beyond what we typically do with our five physical senses.
When people enter the 5D and we talk about like messengers, guides, angels, things like that, like what exactly, like do you think they're just like thought forms that are there to exist? Like what? Because like what I think it is like people sort of, like, we all do it too, is we have to create some kind of model in our head to explain things that we cannot explain. So some people will explain it as angels, others might explain it as guides, other people might explain it as spirit animals. But what I think it is, though, is there are some forms of consciousness that respond to our consciousness. So outside of our, like our thoughts are an actual communicative thing to something that is outside of this reality.
Yes, yes. Well, thoughts, especially in the 5D, are things. Thoughts become things. Let me go ahead and use the example of Monroe Institute, since I mentioned them before. I've been to several of their programs, and in their programs, they will have focus levels, which is a way of kind of taking the woo-woo out of meditation. But, you know, this focus level means this, and this focus level means that. But like focus level 27, for example, is called the park. And a lot of people will see buildings there. And one's the educational center, one's kind of a rehab center, you know, a place for you to come and get rejuvenated. But the more that people go to programs like that, then they're adding their thoughts to that. So because thoughts become things, the more people you have thinking the same thing, the more solid those constructs become. So I think that's why many people, when they connect with a very angelic type being, that may not be an angel may not be a creature that has wings, but many people see the angels like that. So we may connect with this higher vibrational frequency, which is beautiful, just filled with love and compassion. And then we begin to see it the way other people have seen it as well, too. But the fact that in the 5D, thoughts become things. Now, what's more challenging is to bring that down to the 3D, because also thoughts become things. But in the 3D, we've slowed things down so much.
Yeah, they seem to
you
get
don't
skewed
see
through a
it.
lens somehow.
Yeah. And so, we want something and we say, okay, this is going to happen. And it doesn't happen immediately. And then we enters doubt. And so, of course, we never manifest. But when you can develop a tool, for example, that TEA, thoughts, energy, action formula, you're actually getting rid of you're not getting rid of, you're programming the energy, the appropriate energy into that formula. Because if your energy changes in the middle of a thought, which is easy to do in the 3D, then it gets derailed. And so instead of meeting your guides, you doubt it and you don't meet your guides. But if you end up getting a tool, then you use that tool and you immediately go from thought to action. But the more time you spend in the 5D, you can see that if you want to, quote, go somewhere, because there's not really space either, you can think of that place and you're there immediately. You can also choose to slow down those vibrations that you have, and you can decide you want to take the slow way there, and there is no such thing as slow either. So it's hard to use these terms to describe it. But you can go from point A to point B immediately, or you can take the slow way and take a look at what's around. But
Scenic
our
route.
thoughts immediately become things. You take the scenic route. Why not?
It is interesting. I wonder why though the transition from a 5D thought to 3D thought and then into reality, it doesn't necessarily stay the same. As it goes lower in vibration, it definitely gets changed. And we experience it
Yes.
differently, I think.
Yeah. And that goes back, I think, to your point of existence. So when you see yourself as being your physical body, you have just brought in all of that energy that's in the field into your body. That's fine. But then you're living and navigating the 3D world only through what you see, hear, taste, and feel.
Right.
And your 5 senses are wonderful. That's how we get along in this world. That's how we learn to go from one place to another. But then when we allow ourselves to expand and we realize that our physical body is just an avatar that holds our true awareness of who we are, that's when we begin to see the larger picture of what life is all about.
Yeah.
And then one thing I like about that is when we meet up with something that used to really bother us, like I don't travel real well. When I fly, I want my flight to be on time. I want to have a lot of time in between, to go from, my gate to the next. I don't like disruptions. I'm just a real nervous traveler that way. So when something happens and my flight is canceled or I miss my flight, I used to freak out. But now I have learned to step back and look. But what I'm looking for, Gary, is the gift. There's a gift in this. There's a life lesson for me. So instead of me being, angry or scared or whatever, I look to see, what am I going to learn from this? So what I'm doing is I'm taking these bumps in the road and allowing a sacred space for that bump in the road to no longer become an obstacle, but a gift for me. Something may happen and it's just like, this is awful, this is terrible. Maybe I wanted to get a job and I'm, I made it through several rounds of interviews and then I don't get the job. It's like, oh, my life is not going the way I wanted it to. Well, you know what? 2 months later, perhaps that most perfect job that wasn't even on my horizon comes to me. So we don't have that ability to freeze frame and see the future, but we can freeze frame, learn from this, keep our energies high, and just observe the magic that the universe is working for us. So don't take those bumps in the road as obstacles. Look for the life lesson. And that to me has really helped. It's helped me because if I have that obstacle and it keeps blocking me, then it's going to continue to block me. I want to find a way around it or a way through it so that I can wipe that off my table. I don't want to come back and have that same experience next week or next month or next lifetime. I want to move on.
Right. One of the ways I look at it as like there's like you mentioned the slow way or the fast way. You know, it's like if I want to learn about a certain breed of a dog, right? I can go out and I can adopt a dog and I can raise the dog and it could take me 10 years. Or I can just Google it.
Yes.
It's kind of like that, I think.
Yeah.
It's much more relational. It's like in a relation.
It's like, do we want is it the journey or is it the outcome? And sometimes it's one or the other. You don't want to wait 10 years to get a dog. So you have these beautiful skills at your fingertips that can narrow down what you might want. So we can, in a sense, what you're doing is really kind of manipulating time. You're choosing the scenic route or the fast route. And sometimes they both work. They both work. But becoming aware of you're the one that has the choice in how you want to approach that. That's key. And that's where your observer, your witness can really come in to help because he or she will say, blah, 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 blah. I was telling Gary before we started that one of the new things my observer has given me are sticky notes. So when I'm doing something and all of a sudden this critical voice comes on, it's my observer. They come to me in sticky notes. And one example was I was driving. I was going out of a really busy parking lot, and this lady in front of me, and she's like 5 car lengths in front of me. She just stopped and then started backing up, and I'm saying, she's crazy. What is this idiot doing? And then she did like a 3-point turn, ran up on a curb and is coming back. And so more sticky notes, idiot, stupid, crazy driver. And, I should practice what I preach, but this was a good lesson because I'm seeing these sticky notes. And then as she passes by me, she unrolls her window and she does this universal sign, like turn around. And my first thought was, when she unrolled her window, I thought, oh, she can hear what I'm thinking. But then, I pulled up a little bit and the entrance was totally blocked. There was no way for her to go but to reverse. And here I am being the critical one. And she took the time out of me being critical of her to help me and say, turn around, you can't go. But that was a lesson for me to practice what I preach. And now when those sticky notes come on board, I do stop. And it's like, okay, there's something going on here. Don't be judgmental. Just open up, wait and see. But anyway, the observer is such a key component to allowing us to step, because we already have stepped outside the physical. So let's use that to expand even more to see that greater perspective. Then we can choose to act differently. Instead of reacting, that it becomes a choice. And that's, I think, what it's all about is choosing how we want to go through life, one sticky note at a time.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the masters and the angels and things like that, one of the things I've really gotten interested in lately is channeling, And I've been listening to like a lot of channeling stuff, like I think it was Jane Roberts I was listening to, and
Oh,
Bashar, but what it seems like though is a lot of them do have like a common theme too, which is um switching the paradigm of how we look at reality, which is it is like we should be, we shouldn't be, like, I shouldn't use the word should, but we have the ability to shift back and forth, which doesn't just help the individual, but I think it helps society as a whole.
yeah. Yeah. And it's not just society as a whole. This also helps with Earth, with the Gaia, which is the spirit of Mother Earth. I'd never heard that term before. So the messengers were talking
Mhm.
to me about Gaia, and I had to like Google it. But Earth is going through a transformation, and she is bringing us, humanity, along with her. Now, that's pretty significant, Gary, because she had the option of saying, no, 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 let's just leave, let's just leave
Mhm.
these humans behind. We're going to keep moving on. But we are at this precipice now where there are more and more people like me. What a shock! Who started channeling. I mean, I didn't know it. I didn't believe it. It's just like, what on earth is going on here? But what's interesting is if you start looking at those that are channeling, they're coming back with some of the very same messages. We are all
Yeah.
one.
What I'm saying,
This
yeah,
is
there's a
unity.
purpose to this. Yes.
Yes, yes. And as more of us, quote, normal people start stepping into these once thought of as extraordinary fields of awareness, we're changing. And as we change, we're changing others. And as others change, we're changing the whole dynamics of Earth.
Mhm.
And my messengers talk about something or someone they call the silent guru. Okay. So
Mhm.
we have all these ascended masters, Jesus, Buddha, you just name it. And there's all these beautiful masters, but they say don't discount the silent guru. And they define the silent guru is that normal, everyday person like you and me who lives from their heart space, and you see them smiling a lot.
Mhm.
When you pass them on the street, they nod, they smile, and it uplifts you. Now, I am blessed because now I see a lot of energy and energy waves, something I didn't used to see. And when you pass someone and they've opened their hearts and they're smiling to you, there is a beautiful wave of energy that goes and surrounds the other person. They may not realize it, but you've just uplifted them. And then you have that trickle down effect. The more people they go to and work with and whatever, they're being uplifted. But the messengers call this the silent guru. And it's these silent gurus that go through the day with a smile on their face that is affecting like this matrix or this network of humans on a level that most of us don't know, don't realize, and certainly don't see. But that's so important too.
I, I I totally agree. And the other thing is, I think when I first started on this journey, especially with the podcast, I wasn't sure about a lot of this. Like some of it made sense, some of it didn't. I didn't know. Um, like now I'm definitely way more convinced of it. But I don't know where I was even going with that. I completely lost my thought. So
Well, that's all right. I'll pick up your thoughts right there. But once you're in that field and you started off by just talking to other people, and I was always amazed. I've listened to your podcast. It's like you knew so much about all of these topics. But so you were approaching it at this level, but at some point in time, you begin experiencing it. And this is like where I am now. I went from just this normal person to someone who's like all of a sudden channeling, which is like crazy stuff. But I mean, not really, but I thought it was. But now I feel like I straddle the world with one foot firmly in the 5D. Now my foot in the 3Ds is not always real firm, but I'm like straddling both worlds. So when I'm talking with someone, quite often the messengers will come in and I'll say, oh, I'm just hearing this. Or, I mean, I don't give myself credit for it, but these most beautiful words of wisdom come out, and I know it's not me. But what's happening is the more we experience that 5D aspect of ourselves, the more it comes back with us, so that in the 3D, we are the experiencer who's now going through life with a larger perspective.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think about extraterrestrial communication? Do you think that extraterrestrials are using their consciousness to talk to us and guide us along, like the Arcturians and Pleiadians? That was like another one. I was never really certain about it. I'm like, wow, that's really strange. But now,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's actually kind of obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm laughing because, here I am. I mean, I have so many messengers. I have angels, and I've got ascended masters, and I've got just plain old whatever messengers who tell me things like in a classroom, like how time works and what sine waves are and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to ETs, it's like, no, there can't be such a thing. It actually, I can't say I was fearful of it, but it's just like something I was not comfortable with it. And that was not something I really wanted to look at. Now, give me an angel any day and I'll take it, but an ET, no. Until a couple of years ago, when I actually had a close encounter. And it was unbelievable. I, in a meditative state, I moved up into this common space. I saw these ETs, greenish gray bodies, long, thin fingers, almond shaped eyes. They had kind of like gill like features, like where their ears would be. And we started communicating telepathically. Then they moved me up even higher, I guess, into this vortex of energy. And I was aboard their ship. And I'm thinking, this is just so crazy. But then since then, well, a couple of days later, I was at Monroe Institute when this happened, and I was not taking a program that was related to ETs or anything like that. A few days later, I woke up about a little bit before 4 a.m. My back was hurting. They have these great big headphones, and I apparently had rolled over on it, in my sleep. And I got up and reached down to pull out the headphones. Nothing was there, except I saw 4 green fingers leaving me. So what I knew was I had had another encounter. I was not aware of it in real time, and they were returning me. Now, since then, I've connected with them, and they have identified themselves as part of my guidance team. I mean, even in my first book, The Reluctant Messenger, I have a chapter called Cosmic Contacts, and I talk about our star brothers and sisters. It's like, Candace, who do you think they were? I mean, I never thought about, but this is something where I'm with you on this too, dear. It's like, of course they are here. Yeah. Of course they've been here a long time. They also step out of time and space. That's why they will blink in and then blink out of what our senses can measure. So this is something I'm much more comfortable with, but never thought that I would be. which
One
surprises me. It's like,
one of the
of course they are.
models that I kind of look at reality now is like it's all just information. So how that information comes to us or where it comes from, whether it's an extraterrestrial type of information or an angel type of information or master type of information, um, all those things are different labels for different types of information. But what really counts is the quality, the message behind it.
Yes.
But it's all
Yes.
around us. We just don't see it.
Yes. Yes. And that's how, I mean, our energy field is a field and it starts right next to us. That's where we can first connect with that observer. But it's non-physical. We don't see it. It is all around us. One thing my messengers say, like when having an out-of-body experience, we have different layers to our energy body. And they say to me, why take a tricycle, barely stepping outside of your body, when you have access to a Lamborghini? Why not get into a finer, much subtler energy body that will take you farther out into the cosmos, out to see ascended masters?
Mhm.
Why not use that body instead of this close energy body? Like have an out of body experience and you look up and see yourself lying down in the bed or go on your roof. That's great. That's fun. But after a week or two, it's boring. Why not step into farther into that field of energy where we see all the connections that we have? Now, it is all just information because everything is energy, vibrations, or frequencies. And our brain, my messengers tell me, your brain does not originate thought, it's interpreting it. So we will interpret the
Mhm.
information that comes in as being from an angel or as being
Right.
from an ET. And I think that they are, in essence, a different group of energy.
Right.
Part of that, I think, is because of the thought forms. People see angels, and so we tend to see them in a certain way. But they're all just a way for energy to come in. And for us, we're still in our physical body. We still need a way to interpret the vibrations, the frequencies, that come to us.
I
But
guess they need
yes,
a container like we need a
it's information.
container, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can choose what container I think they want
Right.
sometimes,
Right. Right.
how they want to appear.
Now, another thing, this is kind of a loose association here, but the messengers have told me about, the thoughts, energy, action, the TEA formula. And when
Mhm.
you have a thought, they have shown me how this works. And I actually, on my psychic tools dashboard, I have this monitor that comes up and I can actually see this. But they say that thoughts, because we know thoughts are things, look like energy packets that are loosely contained within a structure that looks like a cumulus cloud. So when we have an intention, I'm going to learn how to play the piano or whatever, those energy packets break off and recombine to connect with the thought that we have, the
Mhm.
intention. So now we have this cloud, and what we want is right there in the forefront. Doubt comes along, and I can actually see those break apart and then recombine again. Although this is all, you know, it's
Mm.
energy that I can see.
Right.
Then it recombines again. So it's always shifting according to the thought. So to me, this kind of fits into what you're saying. Why do we see an angel versus an ET? It's the way the information is collecting. Now,
Mm.
does that mean there's really an ET right there talking to us? Yeah, probably at that point in time. But that also may shift later to give us different information from a different perspective because it is all energy. And the universe is pulling in the specific strands of energy in order to manifest or to answer the questions that we have. So I don't know, but I hope that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense.
Good. But you know, that's part of the problem, Gary. It's like when you really do step into this world that is greater than what we are, it's like trying to make sense of a dream that's bizarre. In the dream, regardless of how bizarre it is, we don't stop and say, oh, that is really weird. You just go with the flow. It's the same kind of thing, trying to define things that are undefinable, yet we know they make sense.
We're here for an experience.
Yes.
Awesome. So I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you. But where can people find you?
The easiest way to find me. Okay, the easiest way to find me is just go to my website, Candice, that's CANDICE, CandiceSanderson.com. I've you'll see some of my books there. You'll see where I'm connected on social media, but that's the go-to place.
Awesome. I'll put a link to you in the notes of this episode. It's been awesome having you as the guest of the first episode of Unity Manifest. I got to get used to saying all this new stuff. I'm not used to it. And thank everybody for listening. And here is the new outro.
Thank you for listening to Unity Manifest. Enjoy your experience.